These pictures, once you see them, you can't forget them. They are seared into my memory.
Well, the vulgarity was necessary because it was part of our life. And it was very important to me to show that low side of things. This man, for instance, he was an honored railroad employee. He used to be in newspapers, etc. And then he became frightened because he had nothing to eat, and he killed his cat.
I think the audience should expect to be moved. For some people, it will be an emotion that they feel in their stomach, and for other people, it might be a little bit too much. The museum is an important place for debate and discussion, and I think it's important to present artists who challenge ideas in the world.
Hi, welcome back. Like Diane Arbus, Hugo and Boris Mikhailov have produced photographs that resist easy empathy, and they often make us feel uncomfortable. In this video, I'll explore whether these confrontational, unsettling photographs of people should be considered to be unethical, or whether there's a more interesting question to be explored. Is the discomfort we're feeling also exposing of how we all filter our responses through ideology, culture, and experience? Political correctness or self-censorship has a stifling effect on creativity and society as a whole. Susan Sontag accused Diane Arbus of making photographs that lacked compassion and encouraged voyeurism. She was quick to suggest that the entire ethical problem lay at the feet of the photographer, while perhaps she should have directed some of her criticism towards the viewer. We all try to project a persona that is free of grubby little shortcomings like voyeurism. But who hasn't guiltily flipped through a trashy magazine in a doctor's waiting room to peek at an article on a baby born with 3 legs or webbed fingers? During the post-Second World War years, there was a strong humanist tradition within photography, and then came along Arbus with her uncompromising direct photographs. It was believed that empathy was being lost and replaced by ambiguity and psychological intensity.
You see somebody on the street, and essentially what you notice about them is the flaw. But in a way, this scrutiny has to do with not evading facts, not evading what it really looks like. Freaks was a thing I photographed a lot. It was one of the first things I photographed, and it had a terrific kind of excitement for me. I just used to adore them. I still do adore some of them. I don't quite mean they're my best friends, but they made me feel a mixture of shame and awe. There's a quality of legend about freaks, like a person in a fairy tale who stops you and demands that you answer a riddle. I mean, if you've ever spoken to someone with 2 heads, you know they know something you don't.
Through her work, she transformed portraiture into something that was highly personal, rather than simply documentation. Even though the styles adopted by Hugo and Mikhailov are different from that of Arbus and from each other, their pictures confront and disturb audiences in a similar manner. Polite society would prefer not to have uncomfortable truths revealed about those they classify as vulnerable. The same debates that began when Arbus broke with tradition are still unfolding today. The core inquiry is, do these pictures deepen our understanding of human nature, or are the photographers merely turning their subjects into spectacles as they chase recognition and financial gain? While Arbus looked at otherness on an individual level, Peter Hugo's portraits are confronting audiences' assumptions on a broader level. His pictures challenge viewers' preconceived notions about race, poverty, and otherness. His photographs wouldn't be thought to be challenging or considered by some to be offensive if they were taken in Europe or America. Hugo says, "I'm not interested in making work that sits only in a comfortable space. If my work strikes some nerves and irks some critics and creates a debate, then it has succeeded." 3 bodies of work produced in West Africa have particularly provoked a negative response from his critics. They claim that his stage photographs are exploiting his subjects for their exotic otherness. The photographs for his book Permanent Error were photographed in Ghana. They capture mainly young men working on mountains of technological waste that had been shipped from the West. They're using basic tools like rocks and fire to extract commodities like copper and lead. In this work, the geopolitical imbalances couldn't be more glaringly obvious. Once one gets past the idea that the people that Hugo's photographing are victims, which in their minds they're definitely not, the main discomfort comes from the realization that Westerners are shifting their environmental problems elsewhere. This series began when Hugo came across a picture on the net of a man with a hyena. The caption read, "Debt collectors from Nigeria." This was enough to spark Hugo's interest, and the series has become one of his most popular bodies of work.
The first trip I made there, it was during a time of the year where you have a season that's called the Harmattan season, which is when wind blows sand from the Sahara over parts of West Africa, and it creates this kind of almost like a fog, but it's sand in the air. And it creates this super diffused look. And you'll see, like in the photographs, there's very little shadows. It's like a natural softbox of everything. But it also creates a certain palette, like a almost desaturated palette. And so I started working in West Africa over that time. So the work made in Ghana during Permanent Error I made at that time. The work I made in Nollywood I made over that time.
The images are definitely exotic. You wouldn't find these scenes in Copenhagen or Boston. But I'm not sure the arguments about perpetuating stereotypes or exploiting the vulnerable are valid in this case. Again, it depends on the filter through which one views these scenes. My first response was, "Oh, that's interesting." And my second was, "I hope these animals aren't poorly treated." The objections to this work have gained some traction because Hugo as a white South African is an easy target. He's uncomfortable with the idea that photography's purpose should be solely geared towards social responsibility and safeguarding the underdog. Like Arbus, he rejects the simplistic dogma that the poor or marginalized should be shown to be good, while the rich and privileged must play the role of bully. He finds much of this criticism patronizing and condescending. By making these uninformed pronouncements, commentators are assuming custodianship of other people's culture. Boris Mikhailov's photographs twist traditional humanist photojournalism into scenes that force viewers into uncomfortable moral corners. Broadly in his book Case History, he explored how the ideological vacuum resulting from the collapse of the Soviet Union impacted the individual. His pictures reveal the poverty and everyday reality of a community living on the margins of this fractured society. The style that he adopted for these portraits is very different from that of Hugo's. These pictures don't have the same polish. They appear to be snapshots of everyday interactions. But when Mikhailov interacted with his subjects, he would offer food, alcohol, and money to entice his subjects to perform for the camera. They would sometimes strip or reveal their physical deformities. In one series, a naked woman presented her bulging, untreated hernia. Many of these pictures can't be shown on YouTube, but I can say they're not very flattering. Mikhailov argued that traditional documentary photography was inadequate for expressing what he was witnessing as a result of social collapse. He wanted to reveal how the circumstances affected people on a level of their core essence, and this could sometimes be revealed through their physical damage. He believed that he was creating these setups as a form of theatre. The pictures therefore become metaphors rather than documentary truths.
А потом следующая серия, там мало идет, она уже получилась, начинаем вылезать. Начинается страна новая, начинаем вылезать. Пластмассовый мир начинает проходить, там это проходит эта часть, она есть. Ну, как бы пластмассовый мир. Вам приятно жить в пластмассовом мире? Получите. И получаем этот новый мир. А мы не хотим там быть, там мне неудобно. Вот сейчас между нами молчание. Это молчание как бы должно определить, где реальное, а где нереальное. Может ли человек, который видит это молчание, определить, что к чему? По-моему, нет.
Criticism of this work centers on moral concerns, particularly that he directed these scenes in order to exploit his subject's vulnerability. The voyeurism factor also became significant. The work would inevitably be viewed by audiences visiting elegant galleries in New York and Paris. When making this work, Mikhailov took the position that anything that was legal was okay, and that ethics were, in his words, not special. During the communist era, his images had caused a scandal, and one of his exhibitions was closed down by the Soviet police. So he's grown accustomed to criticism. He takes the view that a photograph can be morally troubling and artistically significant at the same time. So a broader question emerges about the medium of photography as a whole. Where does one draw the line between witnessing suffering and transforming it into an object of artistic contemplation? This debate would then call into question the validity of, say, photography in war zones, but that's a much longer discussion. While Arbus was fascinated by individual differences, Mikhailov's work has historical meaning. His subjects become symbols of political and social failure. He's also gone out of his way to accentuate the humiliation experienced by subjects in real life as well as in his photographs. The ethical discomfort becomes part of his message. Simon Baker, a former curator of photography at the Tate, believes that Mikhailov, through his work, has created a new visual language. It's interesting to read that some commentators are now suggesting that contemporary photographers should hold themselves to the ethical standards of Arbus, while in her time she was viewed as amoral. She opened the field for photographers to begin questioning how we see and judge other people. Contemporary photographers who have adopted this approach also realize that photography itself is under suspicion. So their response is to make photographs that blur the boundaries between documentary, portraiture, and fiction. I'll end with pictures from Hugo's Nollywood series. Again, this body of work came under fire. One of the authors who collaborated with Hugo received threats and was accused of being a race traitor. The photographs were never intended to be documentary records of the film industry or in any way disparaging of Nigerians. Hugo describes them as theatrical happenings. I hope you enjoyed that work. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.